Today we look at the question of the unwinnable math, okay? Not the unwinnable war, the math. Because war, the way it is presented to you on cable news with the carrier strike groups and the stealth bombers and the night vision footage of precision strikes, is a movie. It is entertainment packaged as information. And in that movie, the biggest budget wins, the most expensive technology wins, the most advanced military wins, and the United States, with an annual defense budget approaching $900 billion, is the undisputed protagonist of that movie, right? But war is not a movie. War is a ledger. War is a spreadsheet. War is an equation in which inputs and outputs must balance or the system collapses. And when you stop watching the movie and start reading the spreadsheet, you discover something that should fundamentally change how you understand the current moment. The US military is not weak. Arguing about whether it is strong enough is a stupid question. It is the most capable conventional fighting force in human history, and it is losing the math, not the battles, the math, because the math of 21st century asymmetric warfare is designed deliberately, specifically, mathematically designed to make conventional military superiority irrelevant, not by overpowering it, by bankrupting it. Does that make sense? The mainstream media treats military power like a simple comparison. Our missiles versus their missiles. Our jets versus their jets. Our budget versus their budget. And by that metric, the United States wins every comparison by an order of magnitude. But that metric is the wrong metric. The correct metric is not who has the most expensive weapon. The correct metric is the cost exchange ratio, what it costs the attacker to attack versus what it costs the defender to defend. And when you calculate that ratio for the current threat environment, the number is so catastrophically unfavorable to the United States that no amount of military spending can fix it, okay? 3 phases. Let me show you how the trap works. Phase 1, the math of asymmetric attrition. Let me give you 2 numbers. Hold them in your mind because everything that follows depends on them. Number 1, a single Patriot interceptor missile, the PAC-3 variant, which is the standard air defense munition used by U.S. forces and their Gulf allies, costs approximately $4 million. Some configurations and newer variants are higher. The SM-6, fired from Aegis-equipped naval destroyers, costs even more. These are the tools of the multiplication game. Enormously expensive, extraordinarily sophisticated instruments designed to deliver precision effects at extreme ranges. They represent the pinnacle of 20th century defense engineering, right? Number 2, a Shahed 136 style one-way attack drone, the kind Iran mass produces and distributes to its proxy network, costs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 at the upper end. Simpler variants, 3D, printed airframes with commercial GPS guidance and a basic explosive payload, can be assembled for as little as a few $1,000s, perhaps less. The exact figure matters less than the order of magnitude. We are talking about a weapon system that costs roughly 1,000th to 1/200th of the interceptor design to defeat it. Okay? Now, run the engagement math. An adversary launches a swarm of 100 drones at a target, an oil facility, a desalination plant, a military installation, whatever the target is. The defender activates its air defense network and, let us be generous, achieves a 99% interception rate. 99 out of 100 drones are destroyed. A spectacular defensive success by any tactical measure. The news broadcasts celebrate. The generals hold press conferences, right? But read the ledger. The attacker spent, at the upper bound, $5 million on 100 drones. The defender spent approximately $400 million on 99 interceptor missiles. The defender won the battle and lost $400 million to defeat $5 million in offensive capability. The cost exchange ratio is 80-1. In favor of the attacker, even in a scenario of near-perfect defense, the defender is bleeding financially at a rate that is mathematically unsustainable. Does that make sense? And it gets worse, because the attacker's production capacity is not constrained by the same factors that constrain the defender's interceptor supply. Patriot missiles are manufactured by a single prime contractor through a complex, high-precision industrial process. Production rates are measured in hundreds per year. Drones can be manufactured in distributed workshops, garages, and light industrial facilities across multiple countries using commercially available components. Production rates are measured in thousands, tens of thousands. The attacker can replenish faster than the defender can restock. This is the interceptor deficit, the structural gap between the rate of offensive production and the rate of defensive production, and it widens with every engagement. Every salvo the defender fires depletes a finite, slow-to-replace magazine. Every salvo the attacker launches draws from a supply that is cheap, fast, and essentially inexhaustible relative to the defender's capacity to intercept. Okay? This is the subtraction game. The attacker does not need to overpower the defender. The attacker needs to force the defender to spend. Every interception is a subtraction from the defender's treasury. Every engagement, regardless of tactical outcome, is a net financial loss for the defending side. The attacker wins by showing up. The defender loses by responding. And the only alternative to responding, not intercepting, allowing the drones through, is even more catastrophic. The defender is trapped, respond, and go bankrupt. Do not respond and lose the infrastructure. There is no third option, right? Phase 2, the inelastic target. Now, the math of asymmetric attrition is devastating in the abstract, but it becomes existential when you apply it to a specific target set. And the specific target set that makes this equation truly unwinnable is Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure, okay? Let me describe the problem in physical terms. Saudi Aramco's oil production and processing network is not a single facility. It is a distributed system spanning hundreds of thousands of square miles of territory. Pipelines stretching thousands of kilometers, processing facilities at Abqaiq, Kurais, Sheba, Ras, Tanura, Yambu, pumping stations, loading terminals, tank farms, water injection facilities that maintain reservoir pressure. Each one of these nodes is a fixed, above-ground, geographically known, physically fragile structure. You cannot move a refinery, you cannot hide a pipeline, you cannot disperse a loading terminal. They are where they are, permanently, visibly, and vulnerably. Does that make sense? The ABQU processing facility alone handles a massive share of Saudi crude output. We know it is vulnerable because it has already been hit. In September 2019, a combined drone and cruise missile strike, relatively modest in scale, temporarily disrupted a significant portion of Saudi oil processing capacity. That attack used perhaps 24 munitions. The facility's air defenses, despite billions of dollars in investment, did not prevent the strike. The damage was repaired relatively quickly, but the proof of concept was established. The facility can be reached. The facility can be damaged. And if a modest attack can disrupt processing, a sustained campaign of attrition, hundreds of drones over weeks and months can degrade the facility beyond rapid repair, right? And Abqaiq is one node. One. The total number of critical infrastructure nodes in the Saudi energy network numbers in the hundreds, possibly the thousands, depending on how you define criticality. And here is the fundamental defensive problem. You cannot build an air defense umbrella over all of them simultaneously. The Patriot system has a limited engagement envelope. Each battery protects a finite area. To provide comprehensive coverage of the entire Saudi energy grid, you would need hundreds of batteries, each with a continuous supply of interceptor missiles, each maintained by trained crews, each integrated into a command network, each positioned to provide overlapping coverage with no gaps. The cost of such a deployment would be in the hundreds of billions annually, and it would still not be comprehensive. There would still be gaps. There would still be nodes that are covered by nothing more than a chain link fence and a prayer. Okay? This is what I mean by inelastic target. The infrastructure cannot move. It cannot hide. It cannot shrink. It is what it is: vast, distributed, fixed, and essential. And the cost of defending it comprehensively against a swarm-capable adversary exceeds the economic value that the infrastructure produces. You are spending more to defend the oil than the oil is generating. The defense becomes its own form of economic destruction. Does that make sense? And Iran knows this. This is not speculation. This is observable doctrine. Iran's entire proxy posture in the region, the Houthis, the Iraqi militias, the various networks with access to drone and missile technology, is positioned to exploit exactly this vulnerability. They do not need to destroy Saudi oil infrastructure. They need to threaten it credibly enough and persistently enough that the cost of defense becomes unsustainable. The threat itself is the weapon. The interception is the cost. And the cost, compounded over time, is the victory. Not military victory, financial victory, attrition victory. The subtraction game played to its mathematical conclusion, right? Phase 3. The systemic shockwave. And now the third phase, the one that connects the military math to your grocery bill. Because the proxy trap is not a regional military problem. It is a global economic weapon. And the shockwave hits you personally, materially, in a way that no cable news broadcast will explain, okay? When Saudi oil infrastructure is degraded, even partially, even temporarily, the global energy market reprices instantaneously. Not gradually, instantaneously. Oil futures spike within minutes of confirmed infrastructure damage. We saw this in 2019, a 15% overnight surge from a single attack. Now extrapolate. A sustained campaign, weekly drone strikes on different nodes of the Saudi network. Even if most are intercepted, even if the physical damage is limited, the market does not price physical damage alone. The market prices risk. The market prices uncertainty. The market prices the probability that the next attack will be the one that gets through and takes a critical facility offline for months instead of days. And that risk premium alone is sufficient to push oil toward levels that restructure the global economy, right? At $200 a barrel, a figure that is not hypothetical, but is within the range of credible projections under a sustained Hormuz area disruption scenario, the cascade begins. Diesel, as we have discussed in previous lectures, is the fuel of the physical supply chain. Every calorie of food, every unit of manufactured goods, every package delivered to your door moves on diesel. When diesel doubles, transportation costs double. When transportation costs double at every node of the supply chain, consumer prices do not double. They multiply. The compounding effect across 7 or 8 logistical touch points produces retail price increases of 300-400% for basic goods. Does that make sense? And here is where the extraction becomes surgical. The institutional class does not experience this shockwave as a crisis. They experience it as an event they have positioned for. Energy futures acquired months before the disruption appreciate by multiples. Commodity positions accumulated during the low volatility period capture the entire spread of the price spike. Defense sector equities surge as governments rush to procure more interceptors, more systems, more coverage. The very companies that manufacture the $4 million missiles that cannot solve the equation see their stock prices climb because the failure of the current systems justifies even more spending on the next generation of systems. Okay? Meanwhile, the middle class absorbs the shockwave directly. Their grocery bill triples. Their fuel cost doubles. Their heating bill, their commuting cost, their small business operating expenses, everything that touches diesel, which is everything reprices beyond their capacity to absorb, savings are depleted. Credit is maxed. Discretionary spending collapses. Small businesses that operate on thin margins, restaurants, delivery services, independent retailers fail within weeks because their cost base has exploded, while their customers' purchasing power has imploded. And those failed businesses, those distressed assets, those foreclosed properties, they are acquired. By whom? By the same institutional class that captured the energy spike. At discounted prices, with the profits from the very disruption that caused the distress, right? This is panic arbitrage executed through the energy channel. The drone swarm creates the infrastructure threat. The infrastructure threat creates the energy spike. The energy spike creates the consumer price explosion. The consumer price explosion creates the middle class liquidation. The middle class liquidation creates the distressed asset market. The institutional buyer captures the distressed assets. Every stage feeds the next. Every stage transfers wealth upward. And the $4 million interceptor missile, the symbol of American military power, is the mechanism through which the defender's treasury is drained to fund the very cycle that destroys its middle class. The missile does not protect you. The missile is the cost that impoverishes you. Does that make sense? So, the summary, phase 1. The math of asymmetric attrition. The cost-exchange ratio between a $4 million interceptor and a $1,000 drone is catastrophically unfavorable to the defender. Even perfect interception rates produce financial losses that are unsustainable over time. The interceptor deficit, the gap between offensive production rates and defensive replenishment rates, widens with every engagement. The defender goes bankrupt by winning. Phase 2. The inelastic target. Saudi oil infrastructure is vast, fixed, distributed, and physically indefensible at scale against swarm-capable adversaries. Comprehensive air defense coverage exceeds the economic value of the infrastructure being protected. The target cannot move, cannot hide, and cannot be abandoned. The defender is trapped between unaffordable defense and unacceptable loss. Phase 3. The systemic shockwave. Infrastructure degradation triggers energy price spikes that cascade through the diesel-dependent supply chain, multiplying consumer prices for essential goods. The middle class is liquidated by the inflation. The institutional class, prepositioned in energy futures and hard assets, captures the spike and acquires distressed assets at a discount. The interception cost is funded by the taxpayer. The energy profit is captured by the institution. The spread between those two flows is the extraction. The drones are cheap. The missiles are expensive. The oil cannot be hidden. The math cannot be solved. And the difference, the gap between what it costs to attack and what it costs to defend, that difference is not absorbed by the Pentagon. It is not absorbed by the defense contractor. It is absorbed by you through your taxes, through your inflation, through the purchasing power that drains from your account every month to fund an equation that was broken before the first drone was ever launched. That is the lecture. If you found it useful, subscribe,